progressions to improvise over. A jazz blues in the key of B flat. Now a jazz blues is very similar to a 3-chord 1-4-5 blues in that it's a 12-bar form. But a jazz blues has some extra chords added that's going to open the door for us to play some really great lines to outline the changes. On the screen here is a chart for the chord progression we'll be working with today. Now we start out with the 1 chord in the key of B flat, and then move to the 4 chord in bar 2, and then back to the 1 chord. So all pretty standard to start out. Then in bar 4 we have something that I've talked about a lot on this channel, which is a 2-5-1 going to the 4 chord. So in this case we're playing a 2-5-1 in the key of E flat, which is the chord we're moving to. So F minor 7 is the minor 2 chord, B flat 7 is our functioning dominant 5 chord, and then we resolve to E flat. So that's a really great way to get to the 4 chord in this type of a blues progression. Then over the 4 chord we do a really common movement to get back to the 1 chord, which is to go up a half step and play a diminished 7th chord. So E flat 7 moves to E diminished 7th, and then back to 1. Then we have our 6-2-5 section of the progression. This is kind of a substitute for your standard 1 to the 5 chord to the 4 chord part of a 3-chord blues. So B flat goes down to G7, and then to C minor 7, and then to F7. And then here we have our turnaround section. Now there's a lot of different options of things you can play in this part of the progression. But in this chart, I chose to do like a 3-6-2-5 to the 1 chord. So the 3 would be D minor 7, then to G7, C minor 7, to F7, and then we're back at the top at B flat. Okay, so the solo that I played at the top of this video went through this whole chord progression twice. The whole solo will be tabbed out and notated on my Patreon page. The link is in the description. But for today's lesson, we're just going to go through the first half of that solo, and I'll show you some of the concepts I used to navigate through these changes. Here's the section I'm talking about. Starts out with a pickup playing into the top of the form, and I play a very standard kind of major pentatonic blues line. Right, so right up the major pentatonic scale, sliding from the flat 3 into the major 3rd. Then in bar 2, I play a similar line, but target some of the key chord tones of the E flat chord that we're moving to. So right, so keeping things in the same range and playing some similar kind of lines, but just addressing that chord change. Then we move into the 2-5-1 section where we're going F minor 7, B flat 7 to E flat. And for that, I just really play right out of these chord forms. So I'm thinking about this F minor shape, this B flat 7 shape, moving to this E flat 7 shape. And I just play like right up an F minor scale, really. And then kind of this little enclosure to get to the 3rd of this B flat chord. So that's a little kind of jazz trick of playing an enclosure where you play above the note and then below the note. And then here I'm walking up chromatically to the note. So I'm kind of, playing around that note and playing a little melody that's sort of going to eventually target that note. So, and then here I just play up a B flat 7 arpeggio, and then I hit this flat 9 note, which is part of our diminished arpeggio that I've talked about a lot on this channel, which is to superimpose a diminished 7th chord over a functioning dominant chord. So like I talked about before, this is a 2-5-1 where B flat is functioning as the 5 chord of E flat. So when we have a functioning dominant 5 chord, we can superimpose a diminished sound over that. In this case, I'm playing like a D diminished chord, which gives us this flat 9 sound, which resolves really nice to the 4 chords. So I'm just hitting that B to B flat, that flat 9 to the root, to give a little tension to that. So that whole line. Right, and again, targeting a chord tone, in this case the 3rd of that E flat chord. So next we have the sharp 4 chord, and again I'm just going to kind of stick with some similar themes and similar motifs that I've already played. So this line is very similar to the line I played earlier over the 4 chord, where I went. But the only thing I'm changing is I'm going from this E flat note up to E to give it the sound of that E diminished chord. Now we move into the 6-2-5-1. So I'm seeing these chord shapes of G7 here and C minor. Now it's important to understand the function of this harmony. Now G7 moving to C minor again is functioning dominant 5 chord resolving. So G7 is the 5 chord of C, right? If you play the 5th of a C chord, it's G. So G7 moving to C minor is a 5-1. Now one of the things I like to do over a dominant 5 chord that resolves to a minor chord is play out of the harmonic minor scale. So in this case, C harmonic minor, and that is just a minor scale with a major 7th. So that major 7th note is B, which is the 3rd of our G7 chord. So this is a great scale, great scale to play over this chord movement, right? And you can play a lot of different things. I played this line, right? So that's the line that I played, but you could play anything, Right, so that's what I'm thinking over that G7 chord and then resolving to C minor, the harmonic minor scale, C harmonic minor scale. Then over the C minor, once we get there, another concept that I use is to go up a minor 3rd and play out of the relative major of that chord. So C minor's relative major is E flat major, right? So you can go up a minor 3rd from a minor chord and find its relative major. You can go down a minor 3rd from a major chord to find the relative major, right? So E flat major, down a minor 3rd, you get C minor. So I just play out of an E flat major 7th arpeggio over this C minor chord. And that gives me a lot of the notes of C minor, but also with the note D, which is the 9th of that chord, which is a really nice sound. So and again, I'm always leading to the next chord. So we play that E flat major 7th arpeggio. And then right away I'm thinking about where I'm heading, which is the 5 chord, my 6-2-5, right? So I'm heading to F7 and I'm targeting the 3rd of that F7 chord. And then from here, because this is the 5 chord, it's a dominant chord, I can play our diminished arpeggio, and I'm playing like an A diminished, right, starting on the 3rd of our 5 chord. So that whole thing that's my 6, 2, 5. And now I'm going to head into the turnaround, which is our 3, 6, 2, 5. And the chords they're split bars, so the chords are moving a little faster here. And for this, I'm just thinking just about these chord shapes and seeing the chord shapes and thinking about the notes in the chords. So for this D minor, I just simply play down a D minor 7th arpeggio. Right there's the 5th, flat 3, root, and flat 7, D minor 7. And then right down to the 3rd of my G7 chord. And again, this is a functioning dominant chord that's heading to C minor 7, so I can play our diminished thing again. So there is diminished arpeggio starting on the 3rd of our dominant chord. And then I can just repeat that whole thing again, because these chords just repeat themselves down a whole step. So and there I am to my F7 chord, and then just play that to resolve it, which brings me back to B flat. So that whole thing, tied together really makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of great concepts in there. So basically, I'm thinking some basic blues lines, targeting chord tones, trying to kind of build some motifs and themes that sort of make sense melodically. Then addressing the key chord changes, the 2, 5, 1 going to the 4 chord, just playing out of the arpeggios. Using that diminished arpeggio over our functioning dominant chords, understanding where those chords are. Over the 6, 2, 5, 1, I'm using the harmonic minor scale to get from the 6th chord to this 2 minor chord. And then over the 2 minor chord, playing out of the relative major, so E flat major 7th over that chord. Then over this 5 chord, again using our diminished arpeggio starting on the 3rd of the chord. Then over the turnaround, just playing simple arpeggios that outline the chords, using some of that diminished sound over those functioning dominant chords. So those are the concepts that I use to get through this solo. Hopefully that gives you some good new ideas to think about and to consider when you're playing over this type of thing. I definitely encourage you to go over to my Patreon and check out the full solo transcription. You can learn some of those lines that I played. And that'll give you sort of a head start on how to use some of these concepts. And as always, I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you for supporting this channel. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy this lesson. Take care.